Tonight, you might wake up at 3 a.m. behind a closed door. Lights off. No voices. No fire. No one moving nearby. That feels normal. To most of human history, that would have been the strange part. Because when researchers tracked 33 Hadza hunter-gatherer adults across 20 days and nights, they found something almost impossible to picture. The entire monitored group was scored asleep at the same time for only 18 minutes. Not 18 minutes awake. 18 minutes when, by movement data, everyone being tracked appeared asleep at once. For most of human history, sleep did not mean disappearing into a sealed room alone. It happened near other bodies, near noise, near someone who might wake before you did. Which means your 3 a.m. wake-up may not be the strangest part of the story. Sleeping alone is. The study behind that number was published in 2017 by David Sampson and his colleagues at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, working with Hadza adults in northern Tanzania, whose sleep still happens much closer to firelight, darkness, and group life than the sealed bedrooms most of us know. 33 adults wore wrist devices that tracked their movement through the night. Not in a sleep lab, not under artificial conditions, the actual dark. No bedroom door, no streetlights outside the window, no researcher watching from behind glass. By the movement data, the group was almost never fully asleep at once. That scoring came from wrist movement, not brain scans. But the pattern was still extreme. One or more person was awake, or in very light sleep, during 99.8% of the recorded night. So maybe that number is not a flaw in human sleep. Maybe it is a glimpse of what human group sleep can look like outside the modern bedroom. Not, what is wrong with your sleep? But, what was sleep doing before bedrooms changed it? For most of human history, sleep usually happened near other people. Near fire, near sound, near the slow breathing of people who knew you. In an environment where a predator moving through the grass, a fire going out, or a child crying at the wrong moment could matter. Deep sleep made a person less responsive, slower to react, harder to wake. But in a group, that vulnerability could be spread out without anyone planning it. Bodies left to themselves do not all fall asleep at the same hour. Some slept early, some slept late, some woke before the others. And when those rhythms stacked across a group, the night was rarely completely unguarded. Researchers call this the Sentinel Hypothesis, the idea that variation in when people sleep and wake may have helped groups avoid being fully vulnerable at once. It was first proposed in 1966. The Sampson study was the first to find direct human evidence for sentinel-like sleep, not proof of a deliberate system. Evidence of a useful pattern, which means the person who cannot fall asleep until 1 a.m., the person who wakes at 4 before any alarm, the person who surfaces at 3 and lies there scanning the silence, may not be running a broken schedule. They may be running an old one. The spread of sleep timing across a group has a name in sleep science: chronotype variation. In modern life, it is usually treated as something to correct. Night owls are told to adjust. Early risers are praised. People who wake at 3 a.m. are often taught to treat it as a symptom. But randomness may not be the whole story. Sampson's team found that in the Hadza adults they studied, the overlap between different people's sleep schedules covered almost the entire night. Not because anyone planned it, because people who sleep at different times were simply present together. One person sleeps early, one stays up late, one wakes before dawn. Put them together, and the group is almost never fully asleep at once. That does not mean chronotype variation definitely evolved to guard the group. That is more than the study can prove. But it does suggest the variation may not have been meaningless. The person who has always felt broken for sleeping at the wrong time, waking at the wrong time, running on a schedule that does not match everyone else's, may be carrying a rhythm that once had a function, not as a diagnosis. As part of the night. Before electric light, before factory shifts, before the alarm clock told you when sleep was supposed to end, historical records from pre-industrial Europe describe something most modern people would no longer recognize as normal sleep. Not one block. 2. A first sleep that often began not long after dark and ran for several hours. Then a period of quiet wakefulness, an hour, sometimes more. Then a second sleep that carried through toward morning. The historian Roger E. Kirch at Virginia Tech spent years tracing this pattern through diaries, court records, medical texts, and literature. He found more than 2,000 references to it, with examples reaching back as far as ancient Rome. And what makes those references strange is how ordinary they are. People did not describe first sleep and second sleep as an illness. They mentioned them the way you might mention breakfast or closing a door. Some prayed, some reflected on dreams, some rose to tend a fire, some stayed in bed and spoke quietly with whoever was nearby. The interval had a name. The watch, not a symptom, not a disorder, a recognized part of the night. But then the world around sleep began to change. Gaslighting changed what the evening could be. Electric lighting changed it further. And when factory schedules began requiring people to wake at a fixed hour, regardless of how the night had gone, the two-sleep night began collapsing into one block. Not overnight, over decades. The first sleep drifted later. The quiet interval narrowed. The second sleep was pushed against the alarm. And for many people in industrializing cities, the watch stopped being a recognizable part of the night. By the early 20th century, Ikirch found references to first sleep and second sleep had nearly vanished from the written record. What had been ordinary for centuries became invisible within a few generations. The watch did not disappear because it stopped happening. It disappeared because the world stopped having room for it. In its place arrived the ideal of 8 uninterrupted hours. One clean block, nothing in the middle. Any waking treated as failure. That ideal is historically recent, and for many bodies, it may be biologically unfamiliar, because the body awake at 3 a.m. in a modern bedroom may not be broken. It may be following a rhythm older than the room around it. There is a difference between a room being physically safe and a body feeling safe inside it. Research on social isolation, on what happens to sleep when people feel disconnected from others, has repeatedly linked isolation with lighter sleep, more frequent waking, and a body that does not sink as deep into sleep. The mechanism is not fully understood, but the pattern suggests something about what sleep still depends on. Not just, is the door locked? But, is anyone else here? The body evolved in a world where safety was social before it was architectural. A locked door is recent. The people nearby were not. This does not mean sleeping alone causes insomnia. Many people sleep alone without difficulty. But it may explain why the silent private room, designed to give you everything a sleeper needs, can still leave something unresolved in the body's sense of safety. None of this means insomnia is not real. Insomnia is real. It can be serious. And not all of it has anything to do with evolution or history. But not every instance of nighttime waking needs to be treated as a malfunction. Some of it may be an old system showing up in a new room, not broken. Mismatched. Tonight, if you wake up around 3 a.m., it may happen the same way. Not from a nightmare, not from a sound. Just awake, in a room designed to be quiet, sealed, private. A room built to give you everything a sleeper is supposed to need. And still, something in you may listen for another presence. For most of human history, that feeling had somewhere to go. Someone was usually awake in the night, not because they were broken, because sleep happened near other people. And the dark was something you moved through together. Later, historical records gave part of that wakeful night a name, the watch. Then the lights came on. The clocks took over. The night was compressed into one clean block, and the watch became something modern life no longer knew how to name. So if you wake tonight and the room feels too quiet, that may not be a malfunction. It may be an old rhythm, listening for a world that used to listen back.